Joining me tonight is Brittanee Drexel's mom. Everybody knows you as Dawn Drexel, but you've got a new life now. You're remarried, so I'm going to introduce you formally. Everybody, welcome Dawn Connolly to the show. Dawn, thank you. I want to timestamp this before we get started. We are 2 days before the sentencing of Angel Vause. We're going to get to that later on, but how are you doing? How are you holding up?
Um, as well as I can. I'm very, stressed. The court dates always stress me out. It's just a lot. I've been through a lot the last 15 years and I'm tired too. So, it's a long time coming, and I hope the judge gives her the sentence that she deserves.
So, Don, I want to get into your story because I want to kind of talk to you about it from a different perspective. But I want the audience that's listening to know that you and I go way back. Sadly, your daughter disappeared in 2009. And you were living in Rochester at the time. She disappeared in Myrtle Beach. You went down there and spent an extensive amount of time looking for Brittanee and doing whatever you could do to find her. You and I had, you know, I always said I would give up meeting you for you to have your daughter back. But we met in 2009. Sorry, we met in 2011 at the Q conference for missing people. We were both, you were speaking too, right? I was talking to families about how to navigate the sort of antiquated justice system and deal with the media. People deal with people like me, and I believe you were speaking, right?
I can't remember if I spoke at that conference or not, but I did attend the Q conference, for 2 or 3 years while Brittany was missing. I know I had met you after you had gotten done speaking. We were sitting in the lobby, and I came over to you and I started talking to you because at that point I needed any help that I could get in Brittany's case. And we talked for a little while, and then we ended up going over to Hooters for dinner because that was the closest restaurant and we could walk right over there. So you've been with me ever since. You've always listened, um to Brittany's story, and have gotten really involved in her story. You know it as well as I do. And you were there in 2 years after she disappeared, but I felt like I needed to I would talk to anybody about Brittany's case because at that point I really needed help in navigating a lot of what was going on with the media, with law enforcement, and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you. When I first met you, I was like, well, I don't know exactly what I can do. I'm a journalist. I can certainly get your story told, but over those chicken wings, I fell in love with you. We laughed, and you still had your spirit about you. Although your daughter was missing, and I just, over the years, when we went into this, knot, I'm like, absolutely, I'll do whatever I can do to help. I never in a million years imagined the twisted tale that we would go through and are still going through. And I want the audience to know that, Don, and jump in. And I wanted to kind of weave through the story. In Was it 2014 or 2015? They told you that they had a suspect. Was it 14 or 15?
No, it was actually
Sorry,
2016.
2016, that they had a suspect. I remember they took you in this room and they named Deshaun Taylor as a person of interest. And then they told you, Don, at the time, tell me what they told you, what had happened to your daughter.
Well, prior to us going to the press conference that they had brought me into a room, and I was with my attorney at that point, Brad Conway, who assisted me for, quite a few years in navigating, legal stuff. And I went into that meeting, and I was in tears. I couldn't even talk. I had to leave the room at one point, but I was told that, Brittany, had been gang raped. She tried to escape, and they ran after her, shot her, rolled her up in a rug or something like that, and threw an alligator pit.
So then, John, what they do is they push you out into this press conference with the FBI. They're not the
Mhm.
team that we're dealing with now, and and get you. They've just told you the story. Okay, you're the mom. And get you to. To me, it was a fishing expedition. All of a sudden, because I always thought that was strange. It's like they're asking you to ask anybody with information to come forward. That was the strangest thing. And I want everybody to listening know the story that Dawn just told, that's not what happened to Brittany. But for all these years, Dawn believed that story. That's what she was told. Well, you didn't necessarily believe it. You had you and I talked behind closer, but I want people to understand what they did to you to put you through that, Dawn, was horrific.
It
Because
was.
let's jump ahead. Then we have to deal with the real story about what happened to Brittany, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But I just want you to know, like that's why I stuck with you for so many years, just to see the way you were being treated and the misinformation and the manipulating of you in the media. But then in 2000, I sat down and did an interview with Deshaun Taylor. Remember for Crime Nation? Sorry, Crime
I
Wants
do.
that time. And that's when I first met Mike Connolly from the FBI. He agreed to do an interview with me. And I went off of the narrative that I was told, but I pushed him and pushed him and pushed him on that. And he never wavered. And you and I always said, there's something wrong with the story. It doesn't make sense. There's something wrong with this story. And I remember when I talked to Mike, and I'm going to put that interview up after this piece. And I interviewed Mike. And if you watch the Crime Watch Daily piece, Mike says, Steph, we have people who know something about what happened to Brittany. Those people were not the Taylors. Those people were Raymond Moody and Angel Vause. Correct?
Correct.
So
Um,
let's
and
jump.
Mike was the one that cleared Deshaun, of and what people don't understand is that the FBI that was working her case out of Colombia were the ones that were working with law enforcement, and this is all due to Quan. And that's why they had been looking at Deshaun. But I never really, and I mean, Steph, you can vouch for this. I never thought Deshaun did anything to Brittany. We were only going by what we had been told from law enforcement. But, you know, with law enforcement, you know how many issues I've had with our law enforcement that we had on Brittany's case. The smoke and mirrors, the lies. I mean, it'll come out soon and everybody will know why it took so long to solve Brittany's case. But I've went through hell for the last 15 years. Missing persons is, their cases are not easy to navigate. And it takes an army to find a missing person. So, I'm glad that I had my small circle who I could trust. And if you remember, after you had met Mike, you had said, Dawn, you can trust him. He has Brittany as a screensaver on his laptop. And I gave Mike a hard time in the beginning, because I didn't have any faith or trust in law enforcement, just because of what I had gone through for those, what was it? Maybe 10 years, 8, 9 years, something like that, of just all the stuff that I had been told throughout Brittany's case.
And
And then
I want everybody to understand that, Don, they put you through all this based on information from a jailhouse snitch. There was never any solid evidence. And I've always said to you, and I'll say this out loud. To me, this was good old fashioned Southern racism. They had a black guy and they pinned the crime on him because this was a high profile case, because you were smart enough to get this out in the media, and they wanted to close the case. They didn't have any evidence, and they should never have had that press conference, and they should never have fingered Deshaun Taylor. And now the Taylors are suing the FBI for millions of dollars, and they should. You know what I mean? They put that family through hell. They had nothing to do with the disappearance of your daughter.
Well, and plus I think too, it wasn't just the FBI. I mean, law enforcement had been looking at them prior. I don't care what anybody says. I was there from day one. And I can remember them saying that they were looking at this family, um, you know, back then. But see, what they don't understand. Yes, I know that they're the FBI, but the guys that had found Brittanee are not the men that were involved with the case in 2016.
Yeah, that's really important. I think we're going to get to that quickly, but I want people to know, Don, let's back up. The day after Brittanee Drexel went missing, Raymond Moody's driving on his motorcycle, wearing one of those, I'm not sure what you call them, Don, the old-fashioned style helmets. Like it just sits like on the top of your head. He's got scratches all over his face. He's pulled over for speeding. Your daughter's missing, and nobody connects the dots. Nobody thinks like, wait, this guy's a registered sex offender in the area, right? And I
Right.
want people to understand it's a little bit different back then, because the arresting officer would have had to radio back to the station, and the person at the station would pull it up. Now it comes up immediately with the arresting officer in your car. But still, people's instincts were off. Like, they had Raymond Moody under their noses all along, and then, that's what frustrates me the most about this case. But let's jump ahead. We got a new team, 2000, was it 16 or 15 or 16 that Mike came on,
I
Mike and
believe they came on after that. It was probably about 2017
right,
when they started working on Brittany's case. These group of men,
Mike,
Caleb, Mike, um,
James Kavanaugh.
James Kavanaugh. Yeah. So they came on, I think, in about 2017.
Right. And Don, I think what's important that everybody understands is this, and you and I've always been screaming this from the rafters. There was no new evidence in your daughter's case. There was some new information that they used. And let me explain what that means. So the new team came in. And again, everybody, I want you to understand this is a multi-jurisdictional investigation. And Dawn can talk more about this because she had Myrtle Beach, she had SLED, she had Georgetown, she had the FBI,
Charleston counties and
Charleston.
FBI. Five law enforcement agencies.
So
Five.
everybody's got a little piece of the puzzle, Don, and everybody wants to get across the finish line and be a hero. What Don's new team did is they came in and they got the evidence from everybody. They put all the pieces together. They started again. The new information they had was the truck that Raymond Moody was driving, and they were able to look at cameras that John was told weren't working. All of a sudden, Don, they're mysteriously, oh, they were working, right? And the guys took footage and frame by frame by frame, and there was Raymond's truck, and there was your daughter, Brittanee Drexel. And this was what, Don, where are we at now? This was 2022, right? Well, 20 when we
2021, 2022. Yeah. When they really got down to the last part where they knew for sure that these two were the ones responsible for this. But the thing that I don't get is, okay, way back in 2011, 2012, they were looked at. They had a task force that was working on Brittany's case. Someone here dropped the ball because they had this information already. Nothing was ever done with it until 2020, well, I can say when the FBI started working on it, because at first the FBI cleared Deshaun. Then they went all the way back to the beginning of her case. And that's when they started pulling everything. And within 30 days, they were piecing things together. And it took them, I'd say, what do you say, about 3 or 4 years,
Yeah. Hmm.
from the time they started on the case, to eventually, bringing Brittany home.
And you really formed, your circle of trust. You had myself and Kim and Jared Ferrantino, your attorney, and Mike. And
Yes.
you know, over the years, Mike, it was a very unusual relationship for myself as a journalist that was covering the story and reporting the story to have these, conversations with Mike, but we never broke that circle of trust, right? And I'll
No.
never forget, Don, when it started to happen. Like you were like, they're getting close. They're getting close. Why don't you take us through that? Because the plethora of phone calls and everything, and I'll never forget the buildup and how happy we were for you. So tell me, take us through sort of what led up to the Raymond Moody, the uncovering of Raymond Moody, we'll call it.
Well, Mike, Mike and James, I would speak to a lot. I had their personal cell phone numbers. I mean, they're excellent FBI agents. The four FBI agents that worked her case and finally solved it. I have so much gratitude and I'm just so grateful and thankful for them. Um, they were calling me quite a bit, even though they couldn't give me a lot of information. At least they would tell me what's going on. I mean, they would reference person A, person B, person C, whatever, so they had to go through many things and talk to many people about, what happened that night when Brittany disappeared. So, I would be getting phone calls and them updating me. At first it was every month I got an update. And then, I would talk to them every 3 weeks. And then I could call Mike and them anytime that I wanted to if I had any questions or wondering what was going on or whatnot. But I think the thing of it is I think in the beginning, they just wanted me, the law enforcement, they just wanted me to go away. And the FBI was not, I mean, they were so great with listening to me. They would ask me questions about Brittany and I gave them a lot of information and I kept pushing them and pushing them. I mean, I don't think I stopped from day one trying to find my daughter. And I didn't care. I didn't care who I pissed off. I didn't care about anything. I just cared about finding my daughter. And
I can attest because you called me probably every day, every day, and I always took your phone call because I knew, what you were going through. And really, Don, in your situation, the only tool you had, it was your voice, right? And your presence. And we really strategized on, okay, let's make an impact, let's strategize in the media how to get the message out there, keep the pressure on the FBI, call them every day. But you were good with the guys though, Don. You really, we talk about you all the time. They liked you. They like you. You were hard on them, but you always said to them, what if it was your daughter? I remember you always said that to them. Mike, what if it was your, and he would say, Don, that's not fair. He would say that. But you're right. When I did my first interview with Mike and he took me into his office at the FBI headquarters in South Carolina, and the fact that he had Brittany on his computer as a screensaver with all the cases and all the different things that he did, I knew that this case was different to him. This meant something to him, and you meant something to him, and Brittany meant something to him.
it showed that he really cared, and that he was all in this. I remember the first time I talked to Mike, I gave him a hard time. And I did say to him, I said, what if this was, I said, if this was your child, Mike, they would have been found already. And he's like, Don, that's not fair. And I said, oh, yes, it is. I said, you have no idea what I have gone through before you had started going all the way back to the beginning of her case. And that's when things started to move. They did multiple interviews. They went to grand jury. A lot of things were happening.
Let me ask you a
And
question.
I
So
remember,
let me ask.
April of 2022, and I just want everybody to know too, um, you know, with losing Brittany, I also have lost both of my brothers. I lost my brother in 2022 in the beginning, which was January. I They found Brittany in May, and then my father passed in September. So that was a very difficult year for me. And my dad had to have a double leg amputation, so he was able to go to the press conference when they found Brittany, but after that, I mean, my parents couldn't come for her celebration of life or anything, so it was really difficult on them. But I mean, leading up to them finding Brittany, it was just getting like, okay, person A, person B. And they would just update me on the things that were going on. While at the end of April, they had told me we're gonna go ahead and do a search. We have a couple areas we want to search. So, I went to South Carolina. We had a meeting with them, and they had filled me in on some information, still not knowing who person A and person B were. Well, Brittany was found on May 11th of 2022. They had located her remains. They brought Ray out to the location where he had buried her. And it was a very meticulous dig. They stayed out there throughout the whole night as she was buried in a shallow grave. And they stayed until the morning until the funeral home came and got her, the coroner. The coroner was already there, and Brittany was identified pretty quick. I mean, they had everything set in place because they knew how long I had been waiting for them to find Brittany. So they had everything in place. And I remember getting the call from Mike when he told me that they had found human remains believed to be Brittany. They had found one of her contacts, they had found her nose ring. And when they told me who they were looking at, I was livid, livid when they told me it was Ray. And I remember being in tears. And I know that I had called you, I had called Kim. Um, you know, I just couldn't believe it because I knew that they had looked at him back in 2011 and 2012. And it made me sit there and think like, oh my God, if he did this in 2009, how many other victims are there? Because a pedophile, a level 3 sex offender does not stop. I'm sorry. They don't stop doing what they're doing. Because they kept it a secret for so long, and she had been missing, she went missing in 2009. They found her remains in 2022. So he had 13 years of freedom he should have never had. And believe me, you cannot rehabilitate a level 3 sex offender. I don't care what anybody says. Nobody. You have all these activists for pedophiles. You cannot rehabilitate a sex offender.
So
Point blank.
tell,
I mean, because look what he did.
yeah, no, no, I agree with you. So answer me this: they confronted you, the law enforcement, and you had to make a deal with the devil. You weren't too happy about it, and we discussed this. Tell me what the deal that you had to make with Raymond Moody in order for him to confess to the crime, take investigators to the body, and then ultimately waive his right to a trial. Because this is becomes a bigger part of the story. What deal had to be made? Angel. I'm talking about the
Oh, yes, yes. He didn't want Angel to go down for anything. Okay. So they had done a proffer on her that was all contingent on them telling the truth.
And let's stop there.
And
Let's explain to everybody. Angel Voss was Raymond Moody's girlfriend. Okay.
right at the
And
time.
right. And Dawn and I and everybody involved were always like, well, if she didn't do anything, if she wasn't there or she wasn't involved, why does she need immunity? But at that point, and you did the right thing, Don. You had to. He was going to take you to Brittany. They were going to get her body. They were going to bring her home. That's what you wanted, and the deal was that Angel would. She did a proffer, and it was ultimately immunity. It's a little more complicated than that, right? But
I'm not sure what they gave her. I know that there was a proffer agreement signed, but it was all contingent on her telling the truth. Okay.
very
So
important.
what they did was they conjured up this whole story about how Ray was going to take the fall for all of it and leave Angel out of it. But Angel was a part of all of what happened to Brittany. She was there. She wasn't afraid of Ray. She was not manipulated by Ray. She was not controlled by Ray. She was with him for 15 years. She wanted to have threesomes and sex parties and all this other stuff, you know, you know, in her I mean, this is her lifestyle. This was her lifestyle.
So Don,
Um,
tell me what Ray confesses. Okay, to what happened at this point in the story. What did law enforcement tell you that Ray told them what happened to Brittany? Because it's not what happened to Brittany, but we're at this point in the story. At this point, you were told what by Mike and Caleb and the team. What
Well, and this just came out too on the news. There was a pre-sentence report that was written.
no,
It
but let's
came
not
out
go
on the
about that.
news.
Let's stay in the moment because we're going to get to that. At that time, they told you simply that Brittany wanted a ride, right?
Oh yeah, they said that Brittany had wanted a ride and she wanted to smoke weed with them. First of all, my daughter does not smoke weed. She hates the smell of weed. She hates the smell of cigarettes. She does not like cigarettes either.
And
My
I
daughter,
knew at that point she was lying because I've
right,
done
I knew at
interviews
that
with
point she was
all her
lying. Yeah.
friends. You would told me that, and sometimes I'm like, all right, well, maybe Don didn't know. My mom doesn't know. But guess what? I talked to her friends and all her friends back.
Yeah, and Brittany did not, she would not have gotten in the car if Angel was not there. Brittany thought that she would be okay because she's like, this lady's an older lady. What is going to happen to me? You know, she was only getting a ride to her hotel. But in
What
all
did,
reality,
go ahead. Yeah, tell me the rest of the
she
story.
was roost into the vehicle.
But let's just stay in the moment. What did they tell you then that Brittany was taken? Ray said, I took her to the
Brittany
club.
had taken her, or Ray had taken her to the Pole Yard boat landing. He had raped her and strangled her to death,
So
and
this
then went and buried her.
so now, Don, we've got story number two. So I want everybody listening. Imagine you're the mother of a child. You've already been through one horrific and traumatic story told by the FBI and law enforcement about what happened to your daughter. Here's Dawn again having to make a deal with the devil, with Raymond, to get information about her daughter. And now she's told this version of the story. But we all felt, Dawn, that there was a lot of details missing. But at that time, you were, I hate to use this word, celebrating Brittany coming home. You were mourning her loss. You were processing the story. So we didn't push too much then. Raymond Moody, thankfully, everybody watching, and I'm sure people know, waived his right to a trial, went directly to sentencing. Don, you did an amazing job of getting up there and confronting him. Bing, bang, boom. Everybody thinks the story's over. This story's far from over.
It was far from over, and I was telling everybody that, because Mike knew there was more. Mike was on this case for I would say, what, from 2017, and he's still on her case as of 2025. So he knew that there was more to the story. He knew that they weren't telling the truth. So now, he had continued to investigate Angel Voss. But I was very thankful to the judge that had prosecuted Ray, um, in the sentence that he was given. He's serving 2 life sentences, which he should be. And um, I'm really happy about that. He can't hurt another child. Um, but with Angel, there's just that there was something about all of this that didn't make sense to me. And
And
I've been
honest, right,
with this case since day one.
as hard as you fought and to get answers with Ray and get to the point, you fought with law enforcement to get, find justice for your daughter, bring him home. Now you're starting fight number two. You're like, I need you guys to go after Angel. There's something wrong with this story. Something doesn't make sense. And you were right. You fought and said, I'm not done. It's not because, everybody thought the story was over. I want to remind people, maybe people don't know this, but there was a recording of back from undercover recording of Angel back from 2000. And this is what's odd about this case. When was that recording done? It was 2014 or 15.
14, I think.
Right. So they already knew that Angel's involvement in what happened to Brittanee was much bigger than it was.
This
Pop,
was a police operation too, but that was in 2014 and nothing was ever done with it.
see, there's another huge problem. They had her on tape admitting it, and we knew about it. But I understand that wasn't enough evidence because it's like, oh, people said she was drunk and she was just saying, I did it. I don't even want to use the language that she used. But what's interesting about the story takes an interesting turn. Ray, Ernie Merchant, which was Ray's former jailhouse lover, starts talking to Ray in prison. And Ernie also starts talking to Mike and telling Mike what Ray is telling him. Mike starts listening in on the phone calls. Then Mike starts talking to Ray, and Raymond says some incredibly interesting things on those tapes. Things like, you know, I wish those black kids had gone down for the crime. I wished I should have killed that bitch too. Talking about Angel. Um, what was on those tapes. I mean, this story is far from over. So tell me what happens with Angel.
Well, they had caught Angel in a couple they knew that she was lying. So she was indicted on 3 lying charges, which she didn't want to plead to at first.
Right. Sorry, I was fixing my leg.
Yeah, she
Right.
didn't want to plead to them at first, but then she came back and she pled to they added the other charge because she was only going to plead to 2. And then they came back and they told her that the third one is going to stay on the table because she didn't take the plea that she was offered.
But here's what I want people to understand in the wide scope of the story. Now Dawn has to hear yet another version of what happened to her daughter, the truth. Well, finally, for whatever reason, Ernie and Mike and Ray claims that he's dying, and he wanted you to know the truth and the details, as horrific as they were. And he really laid out what Angel's involvement was, which is, as far as I'm concerned, on this would never have happened to your daughter if it wasn't for Angel. Craig, why don't you tell me what you learned and kind of where we're at with the charges, because it's frustrating because now they can only get her for lying on the proffer, for lying on that piece of paper, and we have all this new information. Tell me what you learned about what Angel actually did that night.
Well, first of all, Angel had told Ray that she wanted to abduct a girl and both of them have sex with her. Okay.
Sexual fantasy in text
Sexual
message.
fantasies, yes.
I want
Yes.
people to understand. And Don, what I think she was doing, just want to stop you there. Raymond had disclosed to her that that was one of his deep, dark fantasies. She was so desperate for his love and attention that she knew, like, if I say this to him, he's going to want me and we're going to do this together. So that's how sick and twisted she was. She was so desperate to
Exactly.
keep this man that she texts him and says what you just said.
Decided that she wanted to abduct a girl and for them to go ahead and have sex with her.
And so that night, uh, if there's ever a story done about being in
Well,
the
it was the night before, Steph. The night
right.
before they were hunting for a girl.
Mhm.
They
That's
didn't get a girl that night and the night before.
well, from what
So
I
on
understand,
so that was April 24th. They
there
were
was a missed
hunting for a girl.
opportunity. They did come across
Yes.
somebody. We don't know the identity of that individual. Certainly, we hope maybe that person will come forward and talk to you, talk to us. But right, they thankfully for that girl, I guess they didn't get her. And then what happens?
And then on April 25th, they saw my daughter walking down Ocean Boulevard. And when Ray had saw her, he said he wanted her. They lost sight of her once she went into the Blue Water Hotel. So she walks back out, and here Ray and Angel are sitting in the parking lot. Angel gets out of the car and starts talking to Brittany. And they acted like that they were vacationing, that they were tourists there. Okay. And they know Myrtle Beach like the back of their hand. I mean, they live in Georgetown, South Carolina. Okay. So they parked in that parking lot. Ray was driving at that time. They roost Brittany into the vehicle, telling her that they were going to take her to her, drop her off at her hotel. So Brittany was leery at first because she took a look at Ray and she was kind of, she was leery, but she still got in the vehicle. Once they got her in the vehicle, they told her that she was being kidnapped and they were going to hold her for $5,000 ransom.
And Don, that's a really important part of the story. I want people to know. Raymond was driving. Angel got into the passenger side. Brittany gets in the back seat. They pull over, attempted to switch drivers. He attempts to get in the back seat. The door is locked. So he goes in the passenger seat, through the back seat, and kidnaps Brittany. You and I always struggled, and we talked about this for hours, that Brittany would have not gone willingly. She wouldn't have struggled. But people need to know now she's being told, just be calm. We've done this before. We're going to
She
kidnap you.
froze, probably by fear.
Right. Right. But secularly, right? She's told, we're gonna take you, we're gonna call
Right.
the commission, whatever the hell they made up, and we're gonna get $5,000 for you. And we've done this before. So in Brittany's mind, okay, she's like, okay, I'm just gonna go along with this. There was no sexual contact, there was no, because you and I always said, how did they get her out to
Well, he held on to her in the back of the car. That whole ride down to Georgetown, he held her. And Ray was a pretty big guy back then. When Brittany had went missing. So once they got to the Pole Yard boat landing, they already had a tent set up. Angel leaves the Pole Yard. She leaves for about, I think it was like close to 90 minutes that she leaves. Who knows what she's doing? She's probably sitting on the side of the road saying, "Holy shit, what did we just do?" I don't know. I don't know what her thoughts were. Uh, you know, but Ray kept calling her and trying to find out where she was, when she was coming back, and so on. So eventually Angel gets back there. They end up putting Brittany in handcuffs. Angel goes and sits with her in the tent.
While
And
You know what I mean? The Ray leaves for an hour.
while Ray left for about 40 minutes or so, I think he went there to take a shower and get his kit.
Right. And people need to understand part of his taking a shower and getting his what is called his kit. It's part of his ritual. If you know, you've seen these serial killer movies, you see that kind of stuff. This was part of his ritual. And we'll never understand why he had to go back because on the way to the pole yard, they drove right past the hotel. So why, they didn't go to the hotel. Maybe it's something we don't know. But Don, you and I went out to the pole yard, you know, remember going out there and you're just like, why here? Like, what?
It's dark. No one could see them. It's so dark there. The woods is, I mean, it's right next to the woods. I mean, it's close to the boat landing there. So, I mean, it was very dark. Nobody knew what was going on. Nobody could see from the roadside anything was going on. So,
Don,
I
yeah,
think,
you've just learned what really happened to Brittany, and if it's too fresh for you, you don't have to talk about it. But again, I want everybody to understand. Now, Dawn has to go relive another story, a real story. Like, do you understand what, like, it's just been like the trauma for you? Like, oh, she wasn't fed to the alligators, gang raped, shot and wrapped up. That was what didn't happen. But for you, it happened. You lived that, right?
right,
You're told this story about, Ray, let's not even get into all the gossip and rumors over the years, the trafficking and all the stuff that you had to put up with, everything that would go through your head. Now, you have to hear from Raymond Moody the actual horrific details of what happened to your daughter. And I know you're still processing that, and it's 2 days before trial. I mean, if you want to talk about it, you can. If you don't, I totally understand. Um, but it's just, I want you to know, I wanted to put it in the context of people listening. You're just traumatized again and again and again, right?
right. Yeah. I mean, what I learned about what they did to Brittany is just horrific. And I think when everybody hears, and I'm going to discuss this, you know, after the sentencing is, I could just imagine the fear in my daughter. And, you know, the last thing she said to Ray was stupid.
What does that
And
mean? What's your
the
interpretation?
only thing that it was stupid that she got in the car. I think that she was regretting that. She was regretting going to Myrtle Beach, and stuff like that. Because Ray told her he wasn't going to kill her. He told her that.
Right. That's what I want people to understand the entire time.
He told her he wasn't going to kill her.
Right. Brittany, in her mind, like, let's put ourselves in her position. She's like, if I just cooperate and get through this, they're going to get the money. Right. And them leaving, in her mind, she's like, oh, they're coordinating getting the money. So there's a part, Brittany.
But people have to understand too, Angel was sitting in that tent with Brittany. Brittany asked where Ray was. And then she kept begging her to bring her back to the hotel. And she did nothing. Angel didn't do a damn thing.
So people need to
She had the perfect opportunity to do whatever she could have got Brittany to safety. She could have let her go. She could have, there was multiple things she could have done, but she didn't do that.
then
Instead, she sat there and watched Ray brutally rape, terrorize my daughter, and then choke her to death, then stab her, and then put her in the water. I mean, this is just when the people hear what he did to her, they are going to be so upset. I mean, it's horrible. It's horrible. Her sister, her brother had to hear this. My mother, her other grandmother. I mean, this is just it's horrible that the whole family had to hear what these two sick psychotic people did to my daughter. when
Mhm.
she, a woman and a mother and a grandmother, could have saved my daughter.
Then everybody remember, all those years went by when Angel knew this secret and she never said anything. So she could have
Yep,
not gotten her in the car. She could have taken her to safety when Ray was gone. She could have gotten out of there at any time. Then, in that time period from 2009 up to she could have said something. She could have come forward. She could have turned Ray in. She did nothing. And now this is important. I want people to understand. Dawn's going to court on Thursday to face Angel face to face, but Angel's only being sentenced, everybody, with lying to federal investigators. The new information, okay, this horrific details that we've just heard. Angel hasn't been charged with these. Dawn's got yet another fight against ahead of her because Dawn's going to fight with State Attorney Jimmy Richardson to get charges pressed against her for these additional charges. Correct, Dawn? You tell me in your
that's
words.
correct. I've been fighting for 15 years. I've been in fight mode for that long, and I will continue to fight for justice for Brittany because she should be held accountable for the abduction of my daughter that resulted in a murder. I fully believe that, and I will do whatever I have to do to get her charged by the state and to have the solicitors or the state of South Carolina prosecute her for this, and she'll be labeled as a sex offender also. So I will fight. I will go to Washington if I have to, but I will fight this and I will get her charged. This is not right. The only reason why they did this with the upward variance on her case is so that she could get the maximum allowable sentence, for her participation in Brittany's kidnapping, her abduction, the rape and the murder.
And everybody, she's facing 24 years. We're hoping for the max. And people just need to understand they weren't able to change the charges. The charges were as they were, even though this new information came forward. The initial case, which is lying to the federal investigators, is already through the system. Mike Connolly is, who was talking to Raymond Moody, is going to testify on Thursday. He's going to detail what Ray told him. Angel's going to be sitting there. Dawn's going to be in court. Dawn's family. I received a message today from Angel's family. No one's going. No one's going to be there. I believe maybe her son and her son's daughter, Emily, who's going to read a statement from Angel's mother, Carol, same name as your mom, who's just too distraught to show her face. She's too disgusted. And, she's an 80-year-old woman. Like, Dawn, this is the thing that people understand. Like, this has been traumatic for you, but it's the ripple effect of murder. All these other lives, these other innocent people that never wanted any of this. Emily and Justin, Angel's children, are learning this. As you're learning it, like, it's all coming to light. They're realizing like their mother is a monster. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, she's destroyed her family. She's destroyed my family. I mean, I feel sorry for her children and her grandchildren. I really do. Because I mean, they shouldn't have to deal with what her and Ray did, and that is on them. I mean, Ray and Angel did this, and now they're going to have to suffer the consequences of it. Unfortunately, don't commit crime. Don't commit a crime. They deserve everything that they should get.
So just to recap, Angel was the mastermind of this plot. She was the instigator. I think Ray says you don't have to tell me twice. They hunted Brittanee Drexel, uh, kidnapped her, raped and tortured her. And at every opportunity, like you said, she had the chance to stop this and she didn't. She had a chance to report what happened and she didn't.
Yep.
She lied for all these years. And Don, I'm just so sorry that you had to go through this again, but I'm glad that as a team we were able to really work together. And I think that that's one thing that people can take away from it. You know, a mom and a journalist and your friend Kim researching and Ernie stepped in and the FBI, and nobody had an ego, and we all worked together, and you got what you got, justice. You fought for, and you didn't settle at just, oh, Angel, Angel was
I'm
there.
still getting justice. I am fighting still to get justice. Everybody thinks this is going to be over. It's not. I want her held accountable. I want her held accountable for the kidnapping of my daughter. It fits their state statute. And she needs to be charged with it. I don't care. I've been in fight mode. I've been doing this for 15 years and I'm tired. And yes, I want to enjoy the rest of my life with with Marissa and Camden and Mila, and my family, David, my mother, but I have to finish out what I was set out to do. And I want to help families. I want to help them navigate through all this horrible stuff. I don't want it to happen to another family. And, like, I don't think anybody understands unless they're in it. But I'm not going to sit by and watch these families go through what I went through for 15 years.
So what
It
you
was horrible. I mean, I have PTSD, I have anxiety, I have, I have health issues. It does a lot to you. And I don't think a lot of people understand that either. But I'm not going to stop until I get full justice for Brittany. And then she'll be able to rest in peace. And then I will be able to do what I need to do. And enjoy what life, the rest of my life that I have left.
That's what Brittany would want you to do.
Yes, she would want me to.
Don, I know you've got some civil cases coming up. We're not going to talk about those. I think, you've got sentencing in a couple of days. I know you're getting ready for that. After that, you fight for additional charges on Angel. Then after that, your fight is to have laws changed, particularly in the state of California, where Raymond was serving 40 years for brutally raping 7 children, and he serves 20 years and is released. I mean, state of California is culpable in this. There's, mistake after mistake after mistake, and just the trauma you've been through. I'm glad to call you a friend. We've been through a lot.
You've been a great friend. I mean, you and Kim and Jarrett. I mean, Jarrett helped me through so much. I'm so grateful for him. I met him through you. Kim has been very instrumental in Brittany's case. She helped me
Don't
in the
forget
way
Ernie.
beginning of it too. And yes, Ernie, thank God for Ernie. Ernie did a great job. I'm so grateful and thankful to him for, the stuff that he did and, wanting to find out if he had any more victims, which, I mean, if we're able to bring another loved one home, that's what we want to do. But you know what, Steph, I do want to say one thing, when you brought up the civil lawsuits, everybody thinks I'm in this for money. No, I'm not. It's about the principle. It's about, people that law enforcement needs to start having more empathy for the families, needs to work with them, not against them. There's so many things that we're seeing now. And don't get me wrong, I'm not against law enforcement. I have law enforcement in my family. But things have to get better. um you know when law enforcement is sending people out, they go to file a missing persons report and they tell them, oh, you can't do that. You can file a missing persons report if your child is missing for 15 minutes. I mean, come on. There's the Adam Walsh law. I mean, that's why laws and statutes are set in place. The lawsuit is about the principle. Ray took everything away from me, so I'm going to take everything away from them. That's how I see it. Okay. any other lawsuits that I have going on, it's about the principle, it's not about the money. And yes, I've spent tons of money over the years going to Myrtle Beach to search for my daughter. Moving there, that I lived there for 3 years trying to move Brittanee's case forward. So I mean, people can say what they want to say about me, but they haven't lived my life. They haven't lived this tragedy that I've went through. So, I know there's always going to be trolls and people, saying bad things about me, but they don't know me personally. And I can tell you that I would help anybody out in any situation. That's what type of person I am. I have a huge heart, but my passion is for missing persons. And, I will do anything to try to help these families get their cases solved.
I want everybody to know once you're through this, this is going to be a tough week for you. You and I have plans. We're working on a documentary. We're talking about a
Yeah,
podcast.
so stay tuned.
Yes, there's a lot of it's hard to believe, right, Don, that there's so much stuff that we weren't able to tell people tonight that people don't know, the corruption, the potential other missing persons cases or other jurisdictions involved. There's so much more. I just hope one day that there's closure for you, if there is even such a thing as closure. But I know you're ready for Thursday. You've written an incredible victim impact statement. You're going to go face to face with Angel in court. Everybody listening, just know it's federal court, so there's no recording devices, there's no cameras. It's a very private and intimate situation, and Angel's not expecting to get the maximum that she's getting, but I think she's going to have the book thrown at her, get 24 years, and that's not the last Angel's going to hear from Dawn.
From me. Yes, that is correct.
Dawn, thanks a
Yeah.
lot. You're getting packed and you're getting ready to leave tomorrow. I really appreciate you. I love you.
Yes.
Like your
I
sister.
love you too. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you for all you done over all these years, Steph, covering Brittany's case, getting her out there in the media, making sure that people, remembered Brittany. And not only that, that they were still out there searching for her for 13 years. People were still looking. And, for all our supporters, we love you and we thank you so, so much for, all the support that you've given us all these years through Brittany's case. But stay tuned because I can tell you there are things that are going to be coming up and you will find out the real truth about what happened in Brittany's case. And what these two horrible people did to her. So, we just want to make sure that, this doesn't have to happen to another family. I think that, I think with getting laws passed, with predators, with level 3 sex offenders, I think that's something that we're gonna be starting to work on. We're gonna do a little activism with it. And possibly even, I'm thinking about, writing a book, just
Yeah,
of what I went through. And, maybe I feel like if we do the documentary and, the book, that people will understand all, that I went through during her case and they can use it. Maybe it's a missing persons family and be like, oh, I didn't think of that. Maybe I can go to my law enforcement and maybe it'll help them move their case along. Or, you know, just for them to just survive in this horrible club that we're in,
Dawn, I'll say this,
of having a missing person.
you realize when you and I first met back in 2011, there was no playbook, there was no
No,
rules. And
there
I
is
think
no
along the
handbook.
way, you've written a playbook, and I think that that's what your book should be. And I'm certainly hoping to help you with that. I think together, me and you and Jared and Mike and the FBI team and the team, the great law enforcement that was involved in this, Amy from the the Myrtle Beach Police Department. We've created a playbook. Those guys always hated the media. I didn't trust them. We forged through relationships where we worked together to bring justice. And now I think it's really important to talk about the story. So this can be the roadmap, Dawn, for other families. We can say, this is what you need to do. we can expedite with no, don't, that doesn't seem right. Trust your gut. So I think that's a really good thing that you can do. I think you've created a roadmap. You'll get it down in writing. You've got a lot of work ahead of you. Got a lot of
I
fire to
do.
do. I
Yeah, I know, I know. I talked to Amy too, so me and Amy will be talking. Amy Prock, she's the chief of police in Myrtle Beach. We have been talking, so I'm hoping that that we are going to get some charges, the kidnapping charges brought to Angel, and and then
more.
hopefully get it through get it prosecuted so that she can live the rest of her days in prison.
So everybody listening, additional charges for Angel Voss, potential other victims from Raymond Moody. This story is far from over. I love you. You stay
I
strong.
love
You
you
can
too.
rest. And
I will.
soon.
All right, thanks.